In this video, I will show you how I installed this compressor in my Jeep, how I wired it, and finally, we will do a test to see how long it takes to actually pump up the tires with this compressor. Hi, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, please consider subscribing as you're watching. And also, everything that I mentioned in this video will be linked in the description box below. In addition, make sure you stick around to the end because I will share another tip that I had to find out the hard way so you don't have to. So in the previous video, I talked about why I chose this compressor. Today, I will show you where and how I decided to mount the compressor. I will detail how I solved the wiring confusion. And finally, we'll find out if this compressor is really better than a $119 DeWalt compressor. And by the way, this video is not sponsored. So hopefully this video will help someone to get ideas for solutions for their specific requirements. As you're watching, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First, I do not have lockers, so this installation is specifically for airing up tires only. The other thing to keep in mind is that I try to be as detailed as possible while recording, but the intent of the video is to show you what to watch out for and to give you ideas and to not be an exact step-by-step tutorial. So let's jump into it. So before removing and installing anything, I took some time to analyze and figure out where the best place for the compressor is to meet my specific needs. So I didn't put it in the engine bay because I didn't want to open the hood when I needed to air up, especially when it's raining. I decided to put the compressor under the front passenger seat because this is the one spot that I have not utilized for cargo yet. And when the compressor is installed, it still leaves room for feet for the passenger in the rear. Okay, so here are the basic items that you will need for the compressor to work. Obviously the compressor. You will also need to get the pump pop kit, which is the air hose and different attachments. And not required but convenient to have is this tire inflator with the readout. Also, to mount the compressor under the seat, I found this TerraFlex seat mount for $110 on Amazon. I decided that it would be more efficient to buy this than to DIY my own. In addition, these items are essential for this installation. Now, hopefully this saves you time. And unfortunately for me, I found this out after I already got the compressor and the pump kit. So I had to spend more time figuring out that I needed these parts and which parts they were. So these are the adapters and the hose required to run from the compressor to the chuck under the seat. And you can see the part numbers, and I also linked them in the description box. There's only one item that I do not have a part number for, which is this part. And you need all these ARB adapters because you need one here. And also because the fitting of the hose and the chuck are different size for some reason. And this is how it looks when it's all put together. And finally, to install the switch and the chuck under the seat next to the compressor, I needed some type of a mount. Since I was not able to find one on the market, I needed to fabricate my own. So I purchased this 12 by 12 by 1/8 of an inch sheet of aluminum on Amazon. Alright, so now that all the overviews are out of the way, let's get into the installation. So the first thing I did is disconnect the battery by loosening the terminals with a 10mm socket wrench. I then removed the passenger side front door for easy access. Removing the Jeep door is very easy. Just make sure you roll down the window before you disconnect anything. So start by disconnecting the wire harness. Remove the hinge bolt using the T50 Torx bit. And then lift the door off the hinges. So now that the door is removed, it is a lot easier to access everything for the install. The first thing is to disconnect the wire harness under the seat. This part was a little bit tricky. It was really difficult to do it while the harness is under the seat. I ended up first unclipping the harness from the wire retainer bracket. Then, I used the pliers to unclip the red snapping thing. And then finally, I was able to disconnect the harness. After the harness is disconnected, remove the seatbelt bolt from the side of the seat with a T45 Torx. Then remove the 4 bolts holding the seat frame to the floor of the vehicle with a 18mm socket. Once all the bolts are disconnected, the seat can be lifted up and removed. And finally, the next thing is to remove the wire retainer bracket from the seat riser with a T30 Torx and then unclipping all the zip ties. I can then remove the seat risers. Removing the seat risers is very easy. You just have to unscrew the 6 nuts holding the seat to the seat riser assembly with a 13mm socket. Alright, so my plan was to install the compressor under the front passenger seat. I also wanted the switch and the chuck to be there as well. So since I did not find a switch panel on the market, I had to fabricate one. And for the material, I used a 12x12 by 1/8 of an inch thick aluminum sheet metal. To make it easier for myself before cutting any metal, I made a cardboard template to see how everything would fit. I also ended up making several adjustments to the design before finalizing it. Here, I'm getting everything marked up on the template and then carving out the holes for the switch and the chuck to see how everything would fit. I then used a 1/4-inch scrap plywood to make a pre-final template and installed it to see how it would fit and work. So here's the draft design. I then drilled the holes for the bolts and the chuck so that I can install the template on the seat riser. So here I'm showing how the seat riser is constructed, and you can notice that when the switch panel is installed, it does not sit completely vertical, but has a slight angle in. As you can see here, the template and everything fits, but because of the seat riser construction, the panel does not sit completely vertical, and I cannot attach the air hose to the chuck, thus requiring bending to the final panel. While I was pre-fitting everything, I realized that I can actually simplify the design, which would not require complex cuts and curves. So after the template was complete, I was now ready to fabricate the final switch panel out of the aluminum sheet. To cut the aluminum, I just used a jigsaw with a blade for cutting aluminum. Also ensure to wear safety glasses because there were a lot of aluminum chips bouncing and flying around as I was cutting. So this is how it would fit on the riser, and I overlaid the plywood template to mark the holes in the right place. So I drilled a hole for the chuck and the bolts. Here's the panel and how it would fit on the seat riser. I bolted it to the riser, loosely installed the chuck, so I can make the final markings for the switch hole. After marking everything up, I drilled some pilot holes and then used a metal chisel to punch out the switch hole like I saw someone else do on YouTube. The chisel worked okay, but having a laser cutter would make things a lot easier. But you gotta do what you gotta do. And so here's how it came out. I also filed it to smooth it out, but I did not record that part, but it is smooth and a perfect fit for the switch. So to bend the aluminum, I used a torch to heat it up first, and then I used a hammer and a scrap piece of plywood to distribute the impact while shaping the aluminum to the correct angle. Also, the hammering part took longer than what's in the video, and I also bent it a little bit too much, so I had to bend it back a little bit to correct it later. Here you can see the fit, and the panel now sits nice and vertical. So once again, I pre-fitted the panel and the chuck, and then again try to plug in the air hose, and now it was a perfect fit. I then made the final installation of the chuck and the switch on the panel. So I'm using the TerraFlex mount to mount the compressor under the seat. The great thing about this mount is that it's already done and has all the holes pre-drilled. My criticism of this mount is that the pre-drilled holes are designed to mount the compressor towards the rear of the seat, and the logo is cut out, which limits customization. So I ended up reversing the direction of the mount, as you will see later. To secure the compressor to the mount, I removed the compressor from its bracket to make it easier. But I do not recommend doing that because I think I stripped one of the holes in the soft aluminum body of the compressor. So this was the first way I mounted it, but I switched it later. So I'll put the compressor and the mount to where they would be under the seat to see how everything would actually fit and where all the outlets would be. I also pre-fitted the hose and then tried several configurations to get the best fit. Also, I wanted to ensure that the rear passenger's feet would not reach any of the components and possibly damage or unplug something. And by the way, this is why I wanted to install the compressor towards the front of the seat. Once I had everything figured out, I was ready to reinstall the compressor to the mount. This time I created some plastic retainers to keep the bolts in while I try to tighten them. I then double checked the second configuration for proper fit. I also loosely attached the metal adapters and the hose to ensure everything would fit and be out of the way of feet at the same time. So now, even if the feet would touch the compressor, they're only touching the body and none of the components to reduce any damage or unplugging. So now that everything looked good, I was ready to start figuring out the wiring. The next step to completing the installation was the wiring. At first glance, this wire kit that came with the compressor seems very complex, but the diagram that came with the instructions is pretty straightforward. Since I'm only using the compressor to air out the tires and I do not have lockers, I can simplify the wiring. So this is the original diagram, and these highlights are the simplified version. The red yellow wire to ignition can be connected by splicing into the positive wire of the cigarette lighter plug, which I will show later in the video. The main confusion that I had was the blue-white wire going from the switch to the dash illumination. After searching and searching online for where the dash illumination wire is in the Jeep, I could not find it. So I emailed the ARB tech support to find out if connecting this wire is even required, and what they told me is that it's not. So I decided to just skip it. So the final simplified diagram looks like this. Okay, so to simplify the actual wire kit, I first removed all the electrical tape. Realistically, hindsight 2020, it would be simpler to just have the connectors and do the wiring from scratch with some 10 and 16 gauge wire, because the only thing I really used from the original wire set were those connectors to the switch and to the power outlet on the compressor. I kept chopping away at it until I ended up with this. The main thing here to note is just to ensure that you keep the diode on the red-yellow wire. Note that at this point I still kept the blue-white wire to the dash illumination because I have not received the email from ARB confirming that it's not required. After the wire kit was simplified, I pre-fitted it to the compressor on the mount, and now I had a bunch of excess wire that I had to chop up again. And that's why I said that it would be easier to just start from scratch with some wire and some connectors. Here you can see how after consolidating the power wire, it has started to come along a lot cleaner. I also shortened the wires going to the switch and the pressure switch, and then I secured everything with zip ties. I then removed the fuse that came with the ARB wire kit so that I can relocate it to a location where I would actually be able to access it when the compressor is installed. Otherwise, the fuse would be buried under the carpet with the rest of the power wire. And here is the final wire kit installed with the compressor on the mount. Everything is fitted and there are no excess wires hanging anywhere. This is how the top looks. And this is how it looks underneath. Most of the wires are tucked away from possibility of snagging. Alright, so the next step is to connect the red yellow wire to the cigarette lighter power wire. To do that, I had to remove the dash, which is simple in the Jeep JK once you know what to do. But basically, you just have to remove the plastic cover under the steering wheel, unscrew the two 7mm bolts on each side of the steering wheel, unscrew the 3 bolts on top of the dash, remove the power window switch and fight to unclip it from the wire harness. Remove the hidden bolt behind the window switch. And then pull the dash straight back. And finally, remove and unclip the AC switch panel to access the cigarette lighter wires. So after the dash was removed, I extended the red-yellow wire by splicing a 16-gauge wire to it so that it would be long enough to go from the compressor to behind the dash. And then I fed it through and tucked it away under the carpet. I then spliced the red-yellow wire into the cigarette lighter power wire. As a quick note, I installed a USB plug here and on top of the dash, so the wires are modified a bit, but the red-yellow wire is spliced into the same power wire for the cigarette lighter plug. Before doing the final installation and plugging in all the wires, I now needed to connect the air hose and the adapters. And here's how it looks mounted and wired. Okay, so now I'm ready for the final install and connecting to power. I secured the power wire with zip ties to the seat riser and away from snagging. I ran the power wire under the carpet to the back of the Jeep where I previously installed a Blue Sea fuse box. And this is how it looks with everything plugged in and installed. Alright, so let's see how good this compressor is. So to test the compressor, I deflated one of the tires to about 15 psi. I then pumped it up to 32 psi. It took about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So my verdict is that it's a definite win over my previous air up systems that I used that took about 10 to 15 minutes per tire. Alright, so as promised, here's the final tip which I found out the hard way. So when installing the seat risers, only completely tighten the inside one and only loosely tighten the outside one because the holes might not match as you see here. And only once the seat is in the position, you'll be able to slide the outside seat riser into correct position and then do the final tightening. Okay, so hopefully this video helped you see how to install and wire this compressor. Please let me know in the comments if this video was helpful or if you have any questions. Also, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to help the YouTube algorithm get this video to others who may find it helpful. And once again, thank you for watching.